Thank you. I would like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm hosting these meetings regularly so that you can get your questions answered, and we felt this was the best way to go about doing it. These are meant to keep you in the loop on the latest information about recovery. There's been a lot of chatter online about the amount of time it's going to take to rebuild. I'm here to tell you I am pushing, and I'm confident it will not take 18 months to get rebuilding process started. I want to emphasize that. We are in the process of phase one, which is where the EPA is coming in and making it all clear on the hazardous waste. And as soon as they are done, we are prepared to go in and do the debris removal. Tomorrow, we're going to be unveiling our form that will be available for people to opt in, giving us permission to go onto your property and do debris removal. I'll be providing more information on Wednesday at our 8 o'clock session where we do a press conference to let people know what's going on. So stay tuned for that. But I would encourage you all to fill out that form as soon as possible, because as soon as we get it, we are going to be putting together quadrants so that we can go in and do debris removal in a quick and orderly fashion. You have my word, and tomorrow I have a motion at the Board of Supervisors meeting that is to cut the red tape and eliminate the bureaucracy when it comes to rebuilding. I make that commitment to you. We are all in this together. We're going to have an office out in Altadena that will be a one-stop shop for those that want to come in. But make no mistake, this is about really responding to our customers and making sure that you all get the service that you deserve and, quite frankly, need. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I don't know who, but I want you all to know that we are in this together. We're going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild Altadena, and we're going to rebuild the community so that we can all once again celebrate such an incredible, incredible place. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Supervisor Barger. For the audience, we have two short presentations, and then we will answer questions from the community members. I see a couple of you already raising your hands. That is the method that we will use today. So if you have a question for any of the panelists you see on the screen, please do raise your hand, and we will go through in that way. But first, we will hear from Los Angeles County Public Works Director Mark Pastrella about debris removal process and the timelines. Director Pastrella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Altadena. Happy to be here with you today and supporting the rebuild of Altadena as Supervisor described it. And thank you, Supervisor, for the push and your commitment. Today, we're going to talk about a phase of rebuilding that's very important, and that's the first phases that have to happen before we can actually issue you building permits, and that's the removal of debris from your private properties in Altadena. The process involves two choices for a community, and I'll talk about those choices as I go through. But more importantly, the process has two phases. First phase is called phase one, and this is a phase where household hazardous waste is being removed from your properties. This process has already been commenced by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and they will give more answers about where they are, but let me just describe a little bit. They are removing hazardous materials such as asbestos, lead, and chemicals from fire-damaged properties to protect public health and the environment. This is being conducted at the direction of the health order that was provided by the governor's office, identifying these materials as hazardous to human health and potentially toxic to both humans and animals. So these are your usual things you might think of, and plus, the goods that are under the counter, but also, lithium batteries, any kind of stored fuels that could cause or be carcinogenic or be explosive in nature. They'll be removed safely. There's identified location for them to be taken. And again, I'll let EPA describe that. It's important to understand that no further debris removal can be done on the property until this phase one is completed. Phase two is where our agency gets heavily involved, Public Works, in a partnership with the government and specifically the Army Corps of Engineers. In phase two, there are actually two options. There's an option in which you can join the government-run program that is free to the public, or you may choose to do the removal on your own. And I'm going to describe just for a minute those two options. First, if you choose to join the government-run program, We will have the responsible agencies will be the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The purpose of this is to remove general fire debris, including damaged structures, trees, ash, and other materials necessary for private property restoration. We are currently working to accelerate the distribution of a document called the right of entry, as the supervisor mentioned. This right of entry document is the document that allows the Army Corps of Engineers to enter your property. It gives them permission to enter. This document is going to be available starting tomorrow morning at our website at recovery.lacounty.gov. The document provides you an opt-in and an opt-out option. The opt-in option is one in which you decide, you designate that you're going to opt into the program that's run by the public again, and it's free to you, free of charge. This program has steps to it. First, you've got to complete and submit the right of entry form and authorize the government to manage debris removal from your property. The release date of this document, as mentioned, is tomorrow, January 28th, 2025. The closure date, or the last date that you can opt into this program, is March 31st, 2025. You can get it again and fill out and or download this document at recovery.lacounty.gov. Or we're going to provide an in-person opportunity, and we will be making them available at the local disaster recovery center in the next few days. What opting in entails is by opting in, you authorize the government to come on, and we do a property assessment, identify site hazards, hazardous trees, environmental resources, and asbestos-containing materials. Yes, asbestos will be removed properly from the site. We will also remove hazardous trees from the site. These are trees that are wind damaged or burnt that could become hazards to falling on people on the site. We also take ash and soil removal from the site. We take burn debris removal. We will demolish structures that are half up and half down, uninhabitable structures. We'll remove vehicles from the site. We will do soil testing and cleanup to test the soil for contamination and remove additional soil if needed, and which may result in depression on the property. We also provide erosion control and install erosion control measures such as straw wattles and others to keep the materials once we've gone away on site. The site foundation, people have been asking about that. You're going to have a choice as to whether or not you want your foundation removed or not. There'll be a slot for you to indicate whether you want the foundation completely removed or you'd like it leave behind. On that issue, I would ask that you take, thinking about that, I would want you to assess the ability of that foundation to support a structure. We found most foundations do not survive well through a fire like this. Talk to your local engineer, talk to your building department about the requirements of keeping the foundation and rebuilding on it. But again, we've been through many of these, and our local building codes don't necessarily support the reuse of foundations. Again, you're going to have a choice here. In fact, I want to mention that there are some places where we'll find retaining walls that are holding up slopes and other conditions that are complex. I promise you the county engineer, along with our office, will be looking at those conditions closely to make sure that we don't create a hazard on your site by removing retaining walls that are actually shoring up the site. The other option is an opt-out option in which you will manage the cleanup independently. This process includes filling out the opt-out form online and then obtaining the US EPA phase certification before applying for a permit. So I want to be really clear, phase 1 has to be completed before you apply for this permit. This permit, aligned with supervisor's direction to streamline things, is a one-stop permit that you can obtain from LA County Public Works on our Epic LA website. It will be that permit will be up and running in about a week, and there's no real rush to it because you have to have your phase 1 done before you can actually apply for this permit. You can still go there and you'll see that Epic LA permit sitting there, but you won't be able to apply again until you actually have the phase 1 completed. The permit's name on Epic LA will be Eaton and Palisades Fire, Phase 2 Debris Removal Permit. Step 3, the county's going to review your application on your contractor's work plan to ensure, okay, so in that step, we're going to take the permit. We're going to make sure that your contractor he or she's a licensed contractor. We'll require that the contractor follow all the rules and certifications under the government program. And we're going to require that the contractor dump the materials at an approved landfill and follow the trucking routes that are provided for our U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In other words, we are not going to have private contractors tearing up the neighborhoods. We're going to have them follow the rules that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is following, and we're going to have them work together to make sure that this project is done in an orderly manner. Again, the costs for the government-run program are essentially free. The cost for the independent doing it on your own is at your own cost. You most likely would take the insurance portion of the portion of your insurance that is for debris removal, and then you would add your own money to complete this. One note I want to make about the privately removing the debris on your own. There are many studies about the cost of this. For instance, CalRecycle says that the average cost for removal of debris from a home runs about $170,000. So I just wanted to be clear about what you can expect. For those of you that are choosing that option, you can go on our site and we'll be listing the type of contract that is required. And then you can check with those contractors for bids to actually get the true cost of it and making your mind up. Last thing I want to state, as Supervisor said, the sooner the neighborhoods sign up for this ROE, if you're going to join the public program, the quicker we can get to you. Although this is not a first come, first served program, so rushing to the website and making a quick decision is not necessarily the right thing to do. What I would say that all the neighbors should do to make you go faster is get together and apply together at the same time so that we and the Army Corps of Engineers can schedule your neighborhood as a block. You can imagine this is much more efficient to do when we say have 10 lots to do rather than one here and one here and one there. So again, not a first come, first serve program, a program where we're going to be using many different priorities to get to those that will get this first, second, and third. And once we get to your site and start working, it's probably only a very short period of time, 2 to 5 days maximum on your lot. We get to you and we start cleaning off your lot. Lastly, Supervisor, if you don't mind, I want to remind everybody, you can actually start the building permit process, the building application process by starting in getting your plans and ready to go now. There's no reason you have to wait for this debris removal. In fact, you can start visiting our county building and safety offices to understand the building permit process, to understand the fees that are required, and all the other provisions of a building permit. We're ready for you. We know about your lots. We've been in the neighborhood for a long time, so we're ready for you. And I'm prepping our building department, as Supervisor said, to serve Altadena solely by creating a one-stop center in Altadena. More to come on that. I'll leave it there and wait for questions.
Thank you. Next, we will have Dr. Muntu Davis, who is the Health Officer of Los Angeles County's Department of Public Health, with guidance on how to safely clean up your property. I do just want to make a quick note. If your QR code was not scanning appropriately, you can check the chat for the website that was shared during the previous comment. So with that, Dr. Davis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry, a little bit delay on the unmute here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everyone for being here. I'm trying to get some answers to questions. First off, I know everybody may be in different situations, and so I'll try to give some guidance based on the location of your property, what may be around it or not. But I do want to acknowledge that, in this, in terms of recovery, it's not always an easy one. And I will say, based on the questions and some of the answers that we're able to provide immediately, the path is not always immediately clear, and that it will take some time. But we're all here to try to help you all navigate this process, and you're not doing this alone. We continue to try to answer questions as best we can as they come up, and as we understand the stage we're at in terms of this process of recovering. So first off, let me say that in general, I know that there are a lot of questions around air quality. And I must say that during a wildfire, that's generally when your air quality is going to be the worst, when things are kicked up into the air in terms of smoke and ash. Of course, with fire debris, for those properties that are damaged, everything that burned can create toxic pollutants in terms of what's in the ash and that material that burned and that's on site, which is why debris removal goes in the fashion that it's going in terms of phase one, picking up any hazardous materials that are visible and removing those. And then phase two, in terms of going through a specific process and the debris being picked up, removed, and disposed of according to specific requirements. In general, in thinking of air quality, it continues to be good to look at the air quality index in terms of looking for poor air quality, which does look at fine particles in the air as small as PM 2.5, which is basically like ash being PM 2.10, larger particles, but ash could be as small as 2.5 as well. And using a N95, especially if you do see smoke and ash, or if you're prone to poor health outcomes with air quality, using that as well. The reason I talk about that also in terms of thinking about particulate matter that comes from fire debris, if you are going back to your property that was damaged or burned, you do want to wear protective equipment. Again, you're walking into a situation where you have, some things that are not good for your health. And we do want to make sure that you understand what to wear in terms of protective equipment to reduce your risk as you do that inspection and maybe looking for personal property. So first off, always wear long sleeves, long pants in order to protect your arms and legs, sturdy shoes, closed toe, as well as a N95 respirator mask or P100 respirator mask in order to protect your lungs as you go through and you may be stirring up a little bit of ash as you're looking for things or inspecting. And we also recommend, wearing goggles, safety goggles, just in case. Just imagine there's a lot of things that are in that debris, all of your cleaners, paints, fuels, other things, other chemicals that are, again, household hazardous materials. We want to make sure that you understand that and you do things that you can in order to protect yourself. Much of the equipment in terms of, we have been donated a lot, but we have been making sure that N95 mask as well as PPE is available at disaster resource centers, at reentry points, although that may change as more areas have opened up. But you can also get N95s at local libraries as well. So please do remember that. When you do go back, if you are going to fire damaged property, try not to stir up the ash. Cleaning up ash is really important to focus on. If you're going to sweep, do it very gentle, oftentimes misting it a little bit so it doesn't kick up as much dust and stir it up in the air, which is where the risk is in terms of breathing that in or getting on your skin. Do those things in order to prevent stirring up too much and potentially exposing yourself, to the ash that gets kicked up in the air. Once you do that, also important to consider, how you may dust yourself off or not try to get that in your car. Maybe it's wiping yourself down with, baby wipes or things like that, or having a separate set of clothes if you don't have the Tyvek suit, which is a plastic full body cover in order to cover up your clothes. Figuring out how you can get back in your car without potentially taking what may have gotten on your clothes back in your car as well. Thinking about those who may have property inside of fire impacted areas, going back to your home and being able to look, always wear the same PPE that I'm talking about here. You may not have to use Tyvek suits as much because I don't expect that you're going to be on the ground and in the fire debris looking for things, but do protect your lungs and protect your eyes and your skin as you go in. And look around, see how much damage or how much smoke or ash may have gotten into your house. It's probably going to smell like smoke if you haven't been there already. And if the air quality, outdoor air is pretty good in terms of air quality, consider opening up the windows and doors in order to air it out to give a chance for things to clear. But as you're cleaning inside as well, make sure that you're also using wet products in order to wipe up or clean up any ash or dust that may be inside as well. And those things will be helpful just in terms of that first going back, washing your clothes if they smell like smoke. You may have to wash them twice or use some, some odor removers in terms of doing that wash as well. But in general, just remember that ash again can be hazardous, and it's important to wear protective equipment when you're dealing with it. And this includes if you're outside of a fire damaged area. Also wearing that protection to protect your lungs or your eyes if you're trying to clean up, ash that may have blown in from other areas as well. As we continue to move forward, we are working on revamping how our guidance is up, recognizing that everybody may be in a different situation. Those with fire damaged properties or destroyed properties in the fire impacted area, those with intact properties that are surrounded by fire damaged properties, and those outside of the fire impact area. So we're trying to reorganize our guidance in order to for people to find things much easier in terms of what to do, what to think about, and what to watch out for. With that, I think I'll stop for the moment, and then we'll see what comes up with questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Davis. And just as a reminder for everyone that if you would like to ask a question for any of the panelists, please raise your hand in the system. I'll then go ahead and unmute folks one by one so that we can ask the questions. If you have a specific question that is for a panelist, please feel free to state that at the beginning so that they are able to tune in. So real quick, the first one is Lori Paul. I have asked you to unmute. If you can unmute yourself. We have Lori Paul.
Ask if she can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We do, Lori. Yes, please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Many of our burned homes are simply not hazardous debris piles. There's a lot of precious items that could be recovered in the rubble. So as some neighbors have already found, there are surprising and valuable items that are intact within our homes, even those that are totally burned. Professional assistance in carefully removing these sentimental and financially valuable items in the rubble should be considered before any County or Army Corps of Engineers clears an entire lot down to its foundation. And it's amazing what fragile items have survived, from old china cups to photo albums that appear to be squares of ash but are actually intact inside because there was insufficient oxygen for those photos to burn. And then there's resilient items like vintage and very valuable cast iron skillets and diamond rings and so forth. And that needs to be taken into consideration. These are not just piles of hazardous paint cans and so forth. So we need to have that as a phase in the debris removal program before everyone just goes in, willy-nilly and bulldozes them. We've also caught officials in all kinds of bunny suits coming in, whether it's Edison or someone else, and they're walking across the footprints of the properties that burned instead of going around the perimeter, thereby crushing things that are intact and very, very valuable inside the rubble. Not every house is entirely burned, even though it looks like it has. We've had to put up a no entry sign to keep people from traipsing across areas that clearly have, salvageable items. And then this is something very important. Next, I just learned today that FEMA or possibly county planning appears to be marking mature old trees around Altadena, for example, on North Olive, that are not dead and that will recover fully with a white X with an arrow on top. The marked trees should not be removed. Many of these scorched and visibly burned trees, especially oaks and redwoods full of fire-resistant tannins, are still alive and will eventually recover, as happened, for example, in the Julian fire. The next year, oaks resprouted. Qualified arborists need to be determining which trees will not be removed.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Lori. So I just want to chime in really quick.
Excuse me, there is one sentence more. What authority are you in entering these areas where people have not signed right of entry authorizations? Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. So I just want to wrap up and make sure that your questions are very clear. I heard the first one related to sensitive items and items
then we need
value.
the trees as well.
Yep.
I'm
but
sorry,
so-
we have very little input to all these community shows and presentations. That is
Yep.
why I've been asked to raise these questions, and that is
Thank
why
you.
I want you to answer both questions, please. with due
Thank you,
respect.
Lori.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go ahead and take this step by step. I believe that the EPA is online, and Supervisor Barger, feel free to chime in.
Lori, I actually was up helping a friend with a sifter last week. So where you are allowed to go on your property, and I think Dr. Davis made it clear, we provide the suits, you know, and you have to cover your
Yes.
hands and all that. We're not precluding people from going on and looking for items. And in fact, as part of the opt-in program, we want to make it clear that if you want to go in and try to salvage, and I think Dr. Davis, you touched on what you have to do in order to protect yourself. We're not precluding you from doing that at all. So if you felt that that was taking place, I apologize. That is not the case, but it's got to be done with caution. And that's really what we're trying to really push out there, is that you can't just go in shorts and, you know, and I know you wouldn't, but we're trying to give you as much information to go in and try to retrieve things that may have survived the fire. And then I'll let the EPA address the other part.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Kellenog with EPA, part of the leadership team for the hazardous materials removal. There's a couple parts to that first, to those questions. And I want to begin by reiterating what the director said at the beginning. The hazardous materials removal is at no cost to property owners. It's completely federally funded, and it's a critical step in moving the property and with the homeowners recovery process through the recovery and re-permitting programs. Now, with regards to individual properties that you have, that homeowners would like us not to go on, by all means, placard your property and call the hotline, the EPA hotline, so we can be sure that we know about this. We can work with you in terms of being there when you're available, when our teams are there. But at the same time, I'd ask you to also understand that we've got a big job ahead of us, and we need to do this as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And like every other agency involved, it's a priority to move through as quickly as possible so the rebuilding process can begin. And I'll leave it at that. With regards to the trees, EPA, as well as several different organizations like the utilities, have certified arborists to do a tree hazard analysis. The markings on the trees are all mean the same thing to the various organizations out there looking at tree hazards. If there is an issue with a tree that a neighborhood feels is perhaps unfairly marked, again, this is something we can talk about, and we need to know what the issue is and enter into a discussion on how to mitigate the hazard without taking the tree. But again, we have to do this as quickly and as effectively as possible. So we encourage you to reach out to us and express these concerns so we can try to address them as effectively as possible.
Exactly who is marking the trees, please?
Thank you. Well, thank you for that question. And go ahead if you have an answer.
I don't know the tree that you're referring to, but I do know a lot of organizations do have certified arborists. They all approach the tree hazard assessment the same way and identify the hazardous trees with the same protocols.
Thank you very much for that
Jennifer,
answer.
I can answer the tree question if you'd like.
Sure, please go ahead.
So LA County Public Works has done a damage assessment on the street trees throughout the area and have and are using a certified arborist before to make determinations as to whether or not a tree is a hazard or not. That would mean that it's an imminent danger of falling over. And I'm absolutely with Ms. Paul about saving these very precious, especially the oak trees that are protected in the community. We know how precious they are to you. And we have been not only looking at our street trees, but we've been actually working with Edison and others to make sure that you don't indiscriminately take down trees. So the marking you're seeing on the trees are arborists from our organization or Southern California Edison presently.
Thank you for that. And so that we can get through all of the questions quickly, you could also go ahead and enter your question into the chat. We have a question from Greg B. It's for those of us whose homes did not sustain burn damage, but had ash and smoke blown inside. What steps should we take to make sure that our home is cleared of hazardous pollutants? He also notes, in our case, we follow the guidance for clearing ash in our home safely, but we're still worried that it might not be safe. That sounds like a Dr. Davis question to me.
So let me clarify. So this is within a fire damage area or outside?
He says for those of us whose homes did not sustain burn damage, but had ash and smoke blown inside.
Okay.
So it could be either.
Yeah. So in general, depending on how much smoke and ash was inside, most of the times this stuff can be cleared and cleaned. And sometimes if it's particularly bad or if the smell is still lingering, there may be some additional steps to take. But we have a lot of those questions answered, at least in terms of cleanup, in our FAQs, and I'll relook at those and update those as needed. But in general, some things that people may consider are, well, let me give you a couple of things in terms of walking into the situation. So let's say you walk into the house, you see how far, ash may have blown in. The places that you're generally looking are going to be around the cracks in your house. So that's going to be doors, windows, window seals. Those are going to be the most open places where you'll notice where stuff has gone in. And I think everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. If it really didn't go in that far, there's not a lot in there, then generally it's going to be less of a risk in relationship versus if your doors and windows were open and everything really blew everywhere, you see lots of black dust and everything else, which is considered to be soot, then that's going to be something different. But in general, most places, especially outside of the fire damaged area, are most likely not going to have that much damage. But again, it's going to be situation dependent. I do think if there are questions about, what may have been impacted and how strong it was impacted because you saw a lot inside of your house, it may be that you do need, or you've cleaned up and it's still, it hasn't gotten better or you don't feel well inside, then there may be some other things that need to be looked at, but it's situation dependent. And you may need some additional expertise to really assess the situation and make recommendations on what else to do inside. Some of the things that we have also recommended was, of course, changing your filters in terms of your air system, but you may also need to have your ducts cleaned, depending on how much may have blown in from the outside and how much may still remain outside as well. But cleanup generally in areas where it kind of blew in usually isn't that bad, but every situation is dependent. I can't speak to every situation, but those are some steps you can take just to ensure that you've done the best you can in terms of reducing that risk.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And the next question in the chat is from Joan. It is, how can we get a metal gazebo removed from our swimming pool? If anyone has any insight on that.
I mean, you can remove the gazebo with a contractor right now if you want to. If you have physical access to the property, you can bring contractors on to pull that, but we prefer that you go through the phase 1 process before you make any changes to the property whatsoever. As Supervisor said, there's no restriction on going to the property and going through, but you have to wear the right equipment in that.
So could that be part of phase 2, debris removal? If someone's got debris in their pool, so that would be included under if they opt in, they would be able to have that removed.
It's an interesting situation because the Army Corps, and I actually see, thank you, Colonel Swenson is actually here. We can introduce Colonel Swenson and he can answer that question. Colonel, I see you there. You want to unmute?
Yeah, good afternoon. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. Fortunately, stuck in LA traffic. I'm not driving. Anyway, so I think the question about a gazebo, and for the supervisor and the person that asked it is, are we talking about a house or property that is eligible for private property debris removal? If it's just a gazebo over a pool and the rest of the house is intact, depending on the severity of the damage, the property may or may not be eligible for private property debris removal. So the first thing I would recommend is that we work with FEMA and we determine eligibility for that property. If it is eligible, then during the phase 2, as the supervisor mentioned, when we do our assessment of that property, we would not take the pool out, but we would remove the gazebo. Either if it's metal, we would cut it and remove the gazebo portion. Over.
Thank you very much for that clarification. The next question that we have in the chat, Victoria asks, please confirm when soil testing will be done and whom will do it. I'm not sure if we've got EPA, Public Works, or U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Are any of the three of you available to answer about soil testing?
So this is Colonel Swenson. At this time, soil testing is not part of the phase 2 private property debris removal.
Got it. Thank you very much for that answer. Deborah asks in the chat, we will be notified.
That question did not get answered though. Mark, who is in charge?
Supervisor.
That is a question.
Yes, Supervisor, what has happened is that we've negotiating with the Corps and EPA, they just made a decision that in lieu of soil testing, they're going to be removing 6 inches of soil from the ash-prone site to remove any potential from ash and pollutants from ash in it. Colonel Swenson can explain why they're taking this approach.
But then once that's done, I know that, but then if people want to make sure that it's safe, will we contract with someone to go in and do testing or what?
Well, the county is not planning on doing soil testing, Supervisor, at this time.
Okay, so the answer to that question is stay tuned. We'll probably have an answer for you next week. But I appreciate the question because that's something that is on my radar now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next, Deborah asks, will we be notified when the EPA will be removing debris in our neighborhood? We do have EPA online.
Yeah, so on the recovery.la county .gov site, EPA has its story map. And in the coming day, we will have a real-time feed of where our teams are in the community for you to monitor where our progress is and to keep an eye on your particular property. As far as advance notice, we will not have the ability to notify you in advance of when our teams will be there. But once we have completed our work there, we'll put a placard out on the street side of your property that says we've been there and completed the work and it's ready to move on to phase 2. We'll also notify you by mail, and it'll be also on the county's website via our story map link.
Thank you. And I think that might answer Mark Douglas's question. He says he wants to see if there's a tracking map for cleanup, like there was a damage assessment, or if it could be modified to show EPA clearing updates like the damage tag updates website was able to do. Is there also a phone number that the community members can call into if they're inquiring about their specific property?
Yeah, there's a 800 hotline number that my colleague will put in the chat for everybody to have at their disposal.
Thank you. The next question, Katie types in the chat. This is for Supervisor Barger. First, thank you for everything you're doing for Altadena and for speaking out on behalf of every level of government. Many members of the Altadena community are renters. Many, like our family, have also lost their homes, while others have been displaced from rental housing that is unsafe to inhabit. In speaking with Altadena tenants, many are encountering substantial difficulties with landlords or property management. Many more are concerned that the rebuilding process will focus entirely on homeowners and will write off renters. what specific measures, policies, and resources are you and the Board of Supervisors putting in place to assist Altadena renters with the short term and to ensure that the long term, we are not permanently pushed out of the Altadena community as rebuilding does occur?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I didn't hear one part of what the question was, but here's what I will say. The board has taken swift action to protect renters that are currently, even outside of Altadena, protected. In this case, if they have pets and they're being denied rent, we are very laser focused on the renters. Having said that, you are absolutely right. I have been focused on the homes that have burnt down and getting the rebuild process going. And I will actually put something in play to address landlords who are not complying or cleaning the spaces where renters are in place. So we're going to put something up. I'm having my team type this all up now, and we will follow up with you. This is drinking water out of a hose that's going a mile a minute. And so I appreciate that question so that we can be proactive on it.
Thank you, Supervisor Barger. Next, Rosie asks in the chat, thank you so much for the meeting today. For those of us with surviving properties with a lot of smoke and ash inside, which possessions are safe to keep and which possessions are going to remain toxic? What type of materials are the most porous? Can I keep my books? Can I keep my couch? Thank you.
I'll see if I can try to answer this one, and it's again situation specific. Sometimes, so mostly your porous things like fabrics, and especially if your property is intact, and let's say you walked up and you had a window and all you have is black soot over it. Usually, things like that can be. First step is to try to clean and remediate, any of the debris that's on it, or the smoke or ash or soot or ash that's on it. And sometimes there's some special cleaning techniques used related to that, but it just depends on how much was on that particular product. And in some instances, sometimes it's hard to get that smell out. And if that's the case, then probably you want to get rid of it. But there are some remediation steps. I can't give specifics related to those, but there are specialists that can come out, do an assessment, and make recommendations on how best, or if it's possible, to try to remediate and take away any of that you found on it initially.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And next up, we have a two-part for EPA. It is, if I have a gate or fence or a barrier on my property, can EPA get in or will they skip my property? In other words, do I need to leave the gate or fence unlocked?
We appreciate that question because this is something that every fire response we have a challenge with. To the extent you can, notify the hotline that you have a locked gate, keep it locked. We will have that on a list, and when we approach your property, we'll endeavor to coordinate having that gate unlocked to allow our teams in. And then once we're done, then you can, of course, relock your gate.
Thank you for that, Steve. And the second part to that question is, will EPA workers be there 5, 6, or 7 days a week? And how many workers will be there? How many on the EPA team and how many teams will be working in Altadena?
Sure. Okay. We are standing up 60 teams between the Palisades and Eaton Fire, roughly 30 teams each. Each team will have at least 10 people per team. Generally, each team can clear about 10 parcels a day. And we will be working 7 days a week. And we expect that we will probably be increasing those numbers of teams in order to expedite this work.
Thank you for that.
I can add to that. He is correct. I was on the phone today with the gentleman, Rick Grinnell, that President Trump has put in charge. And in fact, they have asked for additional resources to be front loaded. And so stay tuned for that. And I'm very grateful to Rick Grinnell and the president for understanding the importance of having enough support for the EPA that are on the ground here.
Thank you. And next, Gian asks, please address pool remediation. Is that cleanup included in toxic removal? Do you have a list of recommended contractors or architects available? I don't know if Dr. Pastrella or Dr. Davis, if you have info on pool remediation.
A pool remediation, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of it.
Yeah, like swimming pool.
Swimming pools. So swimming pools are interesting. You may, if your structure is burned down and there's no fence around, first of all, we're asking that a fence be placed around this hazard, and we will identify it as hazard when we get there on the debris disposal. The pool water, if the water's still in the pool, what most people will tell you to do is dump a bunch of chlorine in it to start to keep it chlorinated. And then, of course, the pump isn't working in that, then you got a pond that could become, a vector control problem, a mosquito problem. And so I know vector control will be in the area to look at this and make adjustments and treatments on open lots. Once you get the pool clean, insurance will typically pay for that, and we want you to get it up and running. The other thing structurally is if you drain the pool, it can lose its structural stability and collapse. So it's important to get the water treated. It's important to keep it there. But first and foremost, we ask, and we will be looking to have these areas at least temporarily fenced off as hazards.
Thank you, Director Pastrella. And remaining on the removal of debris, one of the question is, how are you keeping the property lines intact? It says many of the older properties do not have any blueprints.
Yes, we've been looking at this, and the county engineer, the County of Los Angeles Public Works Department maintains the county surveys. We are the county surveyor, and so we do have the survey lines on, mapping. And we are right now looking at going out and potentially laying out the lots. We also have GPS technology in that we're going to be giving the contractors so they can find themselves on the specific lots. So technology today is allowing us to actually locate ourselves properly within the lots. And because the county, our department, maintains these records, we feel comfortable that we can guide the Corps of Engineers when they come to do the work on your lot. The other thing we have to do on the ROE process is very important, is we have to confirm that you're the property ownership. And so one of the things we'll be talking to you about when you come in is some proof that you're the owner of the property. And that may be difficult because I know some people have handed properties down through the years and not transfer them. The good news is that we bring in an expert to determine property ownership, even with those kind of conditions.
And I want to add to that Jeff Prang, our assessor, is working on that as well and has made that a priority, recognizing that there are those who didn't have the property conveyed to them and it's been in the family forever. And so he's working on that issue as we speak.
Great, thank you. And I think the next question is going to be for LASD. It's about security. It says, only 5 homes of the 50 survived in our neighborhood. Houses still standing are a beacon for theft. Neighbors have already observed looters stealing metal from destroyed homes. It's not safe to move back into our houses until the EPA Phase 1 and LA County Phase 2 cleanup is done. How is LA County going to protect properties that survived and those that didn't until we can move back in?
This is Captain Williams, if I can answer that question.
Yes, please.
So as of right now, we have a number of deputy personnel that are coming from the outside to supplement the number of patrols that we have in Altadena. So we do have a number of patrols out there. They're doing what we call roving patrols and high visibility patrols. However, we do rely on the public, if they can, to report suspicious activity as it takes place. No matter how slight it is, please report it and we'll respond as quickly as possible to deal with that. We also started an email for the public. If they're away and they want periodic checks on their home, they can certainly email us. That email address is altadenahomecheck@lasd.org. That's Altadena Home Check, all one word, at lasd.org. If they give information, the address, and a good contact for us to get back to them, we will go out and check their property. If they give specific instructions to us, we'll follow as best we can. And we will be out there in full force, just trying to prevent looting and other activities like that. I hope that answers
Thank you.
the question.
Yes, thank you very much. And next, Claire asks, how can we get EPA level testing and USACE level toxin remediation for structures that are still standing but smoke damaged from the fire? We are hearing plenty of news about the toxins present in smoke, but smoke remediation contractors are not testing before and after their work, and insurance companies are not, as a matter of course, paying for testing. We whose homes have suffered only smoke damage are feeling a bit left behind in the appropriately stringent measures being taken with the completely destroyed properties and smoke damaged schools. I'm not sure if there's someone who can touch on smoke testing.
So I can't necessarily speak about the specific testing, but I do know that in many instances, there's, I'm trying to think back, like when there are fires inside of people's houses, what may be done. A lot of it is typically remediation, just in terms of steps to take to try to remove anything that may have been either damaged or impacted by it. But I don't have any specific test or guidance to provide in relationship to that. And again, it's always going to depend on the property and what it suffered in that. And I'm not sure exactly how the insurance companies work in that regard, but it is something we can try to find out.
Thank
There's
you.
a question that came up, Jennifer, that I just want to, on Altadena, the community group, there are signs that were put up by Public Health and Public Works that are signs that say caution. And those are official signs saying caution, you are entering an area damaged by wildlife, dangerous conditions still exist, enter at your own risk. Those were put up by the county. There was a question, I guess, for some that wanted to know as it relates to their insurance adjusters. Those are official county signs. And we will have that as part of our frequently asked questions moving forward.
Thank you for that, Supervisor Barger. And I do see a couple of other insurance related questions in the chat. Just as a note for everyone, the California Insurance Commissioner, Ricardo Lara, is hosting a virtual town hall for all of your insurance questions. This is going to take place on Thursday, January 30th at 5 p.m. You just go to insurance.ca.gov to register for that meeting. And the California Department of Insurance has representatives at the Altadena Recovery Center every day. So keep that in mind if you have additional insurance questions. And with that, we'll take another question from Benjamin is, how soon will it be safe to be in unburned homes relative to the cleanup on the lots that are 100 or 200 feet away?
So this is a common question, and I will say that I've seen the spectrum of what people want to do, in terms of things and what risks they'll take. The question of safety, I think, is partially related to your underlying health conditions, what you may be more or less sensitive to. We try to give steps to take in order to reduce risk, and we're working on some more specific guidance because we do know some people want to go back to their homes even though they've been surrounded by damaged properties, and want to do that before phase 1 and phase 2 are completed. And we'll try to provide and make sure we provide some information on how to reduce risk in those situations. But everyone's a little bit different in terms of their risk tolerance, in terms of what they can take, and people are different in terms of their underlying health and what they're sensitive to. So I think some of this is going to depend on how you feel when you go back, what you run into when you go back, and I will say that during the processes of phase 1 and phase 2, I understand that both EPA as well as the Army Corps, will implement steps to reduce, potential kicking up of dust and debris and other things in order to protect, one, the workers who are there, but also the environment and the neighboring communities.
Thank you for that. And there are some questions, Director Pastrella, that's talking about submitting plans. How soon can we submit plans for rebuilding? I don't know if you have that info, or do we have the right to build an ADU while we are waiting for the main structure to be built? Do you have any insight on that?
You can be submitting plans as we speak. There's no restriction on the submittal of plans at this time. We'll expedite those plans. And whether or not an ADU or it's a single family dwelling is really about the compliance with the zoning. The zoning code still applies to these lots. And so you'd have to look at zoning code requirements, but I'm assuming that an ADU, the right size and with the minimum habitable requirements, would be fine on the property.
Thank you for that. The next question might be for you as well. It says, what is the status of modeling and mitigating the potential for mudslides?
Thank you. We've been at that for more than 100 years, and we've gotten better and better at this last storm event, which I'm very happy to tell you we did quite well on, and I'm really proud of the residents who remain behind. I want to thank our partners at Fire and Sheriff for helping us get the word out about the potential hazards now that we've had a big burn scar. We had no injuries, no loss of life, no major property damage in this event, and that's because we were forecasting and really making a Herculean effort to sandbag and divert flows into their waterways. If you go over to Eaton Canyon, you'll see the reservoir is full of a lot of silt and debris, black ash. That's a natural process after a fire. The debris basin is completely sized for these kind of events, so we're glad about that. And again, we've installed a lot of mitigation in the streets. So again, we're keeping an eye open. I want you all to be keep your eyes open. We have another opening for rain next weekend.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have a question from Caroline. Can homeowners who are worried about fire cleanup in standing homes hire ServPro and private disaster abatement companies like them?
You want this one?
Myra, it seems like you've unmuted yourself. Did you have an answer related to homeowners doing fire cleanup? Myra, I believe, is from the EPA. I'm sorry, FEMA. Seems like we lost her.
Question's kind of interesting. I know that insurance companies are hiring ServPro and other companies like that to do cleanup on partially damaged or no damaged homes. And they do have a method for cleaning that is recognized. I have personal experience with it, so that's why I spoke up.
My apologies. The question was for FEMA IA? Yes, okay. If the applicant doesn't have any coverage for the cleanup, okay, FEMA is providing assistance for cleanup. It's a certain amount established by the disaster. The applicant can submit their receipts, and we're going to review the case and determine the eligibility. But that doesn't mean that FEMA will cover the all costs of the debris removal or cleanup.
Okay, thank you. And with that is our last question. We are just finishing up at 5 o'clock, but your questions that you've submitted in the chat, we'll take those questions back. And if you visit recovery.lacounty.gov, there is a page specific to Altadena. We'll make sure that we get those frequently asked questions updated to reflect all of those. And then again, the reminder that there is the insurance town hall. So please visit their website for more information on that. And Supervisor Barger, I'll turn it back to you if you have any closing remarks.
Yeah, I see a lot of questions like Anthony, regarding the setbacks and all. This is going to be the first, this is not the last. And as it relates to the rental that we talked about, we will be following up with you to make sure that all this information gets out there. But please tell your neighbors, when we put online tomorrow, the ability for you to opt in to be part of the debris removal, the sooner we get those applications in and can really put them in line so that we can get the debris moving in quadrants, is what I'm calling them. the better. Because I really am anxious to get the debris removal done as soon as possible. And to Mark Pistrella's point, if you've got plans and you want to submit them, you can do it today. And I am working on the ADU issue as it relates to, my goal is to allow ADUs so that when the homes are built, in fact, the ADUs can remain on that property. So it's important that we coordinate and work on that. But I believe that is an opportunity for you to live on the property while the rebuilding is going on. And then once the rebuilding is done, you've got an ADU that's available. So stay tuned for that as well. And I appreciate you all being on this, and we will have more of these, but please stay safe and know that I'm going to continue to fight for you.
Thank you, Supervisor Barger. And that does conclude our community meeting for today. If you have any questions, please do follow up. Again, the Altadena Disaster Recovery Center address is on the screen, and you can always reach out to the county's coordinated Joint Information Center if you have questions. And Myra, from the FEMA, I see that you have raised your hand. Did you still have one last comment that you need to make?
Yes, ma'am. I will encourage applicants to call 211 for resources in regard cleanup and debris removal as well. It's out there, voluntary agencies that can be assisting them as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.